Hello, my friends, and welcome to 5 for the Future for this week, the week of April 15th. Let's jump into the 5 topics that stood out to me recently as signals of change that could impact your small business. I'll summarize the stories and share why you should care. Here are our 5 topics for this week. Saudi Arabia, big tech antitrust, manufacturing in China, 4-day work week, and mergers and acquisitions. All right, let's begin with our story number 1, activity in Saudi Arabia. If you've followed 5 for the Future for a while now, you should be familiar with Saudi Arabia's planned futuristic fancy new communities like NEOM. The original plan was for 1.5 million people to be living in this cognitive city by 2030. Now they're saying it will likely be under 300,000 people due to some delays in construction. Saudi Arabia is trying to find new ways to diversify the kingdom's economy away from oil and pivot towards technology and innovation. And apparently, that includes glow-in-the-dark beaches, ski slopes, an artificial moon, robot butlers, and flying taxis. But it turns out it may also include massive surveillance of residents and harsh punishments for any criticism of the new city called The Line that will be part of NEOM. There are doubters that the city will ever really take off, with one person commenting, "Exploring this place when it is inevitably abandoned is going to be amazing." Beyond NEOM and The Line, Saudi Arabia has plans to create a theme park devoted to Dragon Ball, the hugely popular manga series, which will include a 229-foot dragon and rides and attractions. So what does this all mean for you and your small business? Probably nothing. I think it's important to be aware of the plans for major futuristic developments like this, which could alter the way we see our world. Will Saudi Arabia, which has reportedly already handed down a 30-year prison sentence for someone who deigned to criticize NEOM, will they succeed in attracting tourists and bringing in revenue that's not tied to oil? What does this futuristic development tell us about future developments? Climate change issues, global tourism. It pays to keep these oddities in mind, just in case. What might the future look like? If you really dig into the plans Saudi Arabia has for future developments, they want to be the destination for the super rich and famous in the future. Will they succeed if they continue the regime that significantly curtails women's rights? I like to imagine a future where countries like Saudi Arabia recognize the need to treat everyone equally, whether that's because they're forced to in order to bring in revenue, or they see the value that women can contribute. I don't want to think of a future where places like NEOM become a huge tourism hub and we all just accept that women's rights are severely limited but travel there anyway. All right, moving on to our story number 2, big tech antitrust. The FTC has big tech firms like Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet in its sights for some serious antitrust issues, especially as it relates to AI deals. The concern is that these firms might be distorting innovation and undermining fair competition in the AI market. Beyond AI, the DOJ has accused Apple of using anti-competitive practices to get higher fees and limit competitors and therefore innovation when it comes to their App Store. Just the accusation led to a big drop in market value for Apple. And it's not just the DOJ, but also the European Commission accusing Apple of not competing fairly. And it's not just Apple. Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg are under scrutiny for working to access encrypted user actions in apps like Snapchat, YouTube, and Amazon in order to improve its own competitive offerings by spying on its competitors. And Amazon has been able to be so vague about how it makes money that it makes it hard for the FTC to accuse it of unfair practices. By glomming all their revenue sources together, it becomes difficult for the FTC to see which divisions are losing money, a sign of trying to establish a monopoly, and which divisions are making boatloads of money, a sign of a successful monopoly situation. So what does this all mean for you and your small business? If giant companies are able to establish monopoly or oligopoly situations, then that doesn't bode well for small businesses playing in those markets, like anyone selling their products on Amazon or offering an app through the App Store. Will the big tech lobbyists win and maintain the dominance of their firms? I'm not a huge fan of these giant tech firms that seem to be able to easily dominate the market, but I also wonder if they are just one innovation away from being made unnecessary or at least no longer a monopoly. I do support the government enforcing antitrust law, but let's also focus on enabling small businesses to compete and stand out without having to be acquired by big tech in order to stifle their innovation and competition. So what might the future look like? Imagine a future where there are multiple online platforms for sales, not just Amazon or Chinese places, where there are multiple search engines, not just Google, where the App Store is an equal opportunity place for small businesses, where giant corporations can't dominate the world of technology and small businesses have choices in how they promote themselves online. Will that future come from antitrust laws or natural competition? That's the part I don't know. And with that, let's move on to story number 3, manufacturing in China. China's been in the news a lot lately, so let's look at some of these stories. First, a Slovakian flying car company has sold the Chinese rights to their vehicle to a Chinese firm to market in China. That same firm staged a huge promotion of its air car with YouTube star Mr. Beast, who apparently didn't even get in the air car because he's afraid of heights. So, did that marketing actually work? I don't know. That's a side note. And another Chinese car manufacturer is now creating a manufacturing plant in Spain to make EVs, gas-powered and hybrid cars for the European market. On the flip side, China is working to keep US chips out of their own telecommunication systems, perhaps as the US does something similar for security reasons. Not only has their own chip technology improved to the point where the Chinese don't need US chips, but China is now eclipsing the United States in the number of top AI engineers, a sign that they hope to pull ahead in the race to develop AI technology. These Chinese AI specialists also make up over 1/3 of all the top AI researchers in the US, up from just under a quarter only 3 years ago. Despite all these issues between the US and China, Chinese executives are encouraging US firms to continue investing in Chinese manufacturing, which can help grow the lagging Chinese economy. So what does this mean for you and your small business? Our government seems to have a love-hate sort of relationship with China, where we try to make the most of our dependence on Chinese technology and manufacturing expertise while hopefully pushing back on the biggest concerns business-wise, like hacking and market saturation. As a small business owner, be wary of any dependence on Chinese components or manufacturing expertise, and be sure to find backup options, and maybe just double-check your own cybersecurity situation while you're at it. What might the future look like? One advantage of an autocracy like China is a united front as leaders work to maintain their global dominance in the world of manufacturing and tech, with support from the government to keep prices low. But I certainly don't condone this behavior, and I also don't see it changing anytime soon. I imagine our near future won't be much different from our past as the US and other governments work to find that balance between trade with China and a level of hacking and information gobbling that we're comfortable with. It's easy to see why US CEOs list geopolitical instability as one of their top concerns this year. All right, and moving on to story number 4, the 4-day work week. This topic keeps coming up in the news, both from politicians like Bernie Sanders, who wants to make a 32-hour week the law, and from CEOs who agree that AI might make a shorter week actually possible. A nonprofit organization called 4-Day Week Global is also advocating for a 4-day week across the globe, backed by actual studies showing how firms were just as productive and profitable with a 4-day work week while employees felt less burnout and more job satisfaction. Even manufacturing firms are finding that offering some flexibility in scheduling can help you recruit and retain employees and maintain just as much manufacturing productivity as with the more traditional hours. So what does this mean for you and your small business? Well, even if you run a production line, it's worth your while to consider offering some flexibility in schedules, and maybe possibly even 4-day work weeks. Although, a word to the wise, once you offer a benefit like this, even if you call it an experiment, I don't think you'll be able to go back to your previous 5 days a week norm. So make sure you're prepared for what you want to offer. But do know that the data shows that taking it easier one day of the week can supercharge performance on other days, plus mitigate the cost of worker burnout and turnover. The reality is that there is a lot of downtime built into our regular schedules. So if you think your team will step up their work 4 days a week in exchange for 1 day off, then give it some consideration. And what might the future look like with a 4-day work week? Imagine a future where we all work 4 days a week and all of our weekends are 3-day weekends. One hedge fund giant has already said he's investing in golf courses as he expects that as we all add that extra day off, we'll fill it with leisure activities like golf. So imagine your future as a participant or even an investor in some long-term weekend leisure activities. And imagine a future with loyal employees who are super productive 4 days a week in exchange for that 3-day weekend. Struggling to see it? Be warned, if other small businesses in your area start offering a 4-day work week, it's going to get a whole lot harder for you to recruit or even retain employees. And now our final story, story number 5, mergers and acquisitions. According to the Wall Street Journal, a wave of mega deals is underway, which could signal a rebound of merger and acquisition activity, which is itself a signal of an improving economy and greater openness to traditional lending. M&A deals include Capital One buying Discover and Home Depot buying a roofing distributor, as well as a recent large acquisition from software firm Synopsys. In fact, total deal activity in the U.S. is up 130% from last year. But JP Morgan is doubtful of this M&A wave, expressing concern that the regulatory environment might slow things down, meaning the U.S. government cracking down on mega mergers due to antitrust concerns, as mentioned in the previous story. So what does this mean for you and your small business? M&A activity can be a sign of a good economy, but it's also a reminder to small businesses about the potential for your own M&A activity. First, did you know that the SBA is making it easier for you to buy an interest in another business using an SBA loan? This makes it easier to acquire a business over time, keeping on the owner before they transition out. Not only that, but MBA students are starting to realize the value of buying an existing small business to run, rather than trying to fight their way through the hierarchy of big tech while being constantly threatened by layoffs. And firms like They Got Acquired are helping smaller businesses find acquisition partners for very small deals typically ignored by most firms, companies selling from $100,000 up to $50 million. So what might the future look like? According to the U.S. Census Bureau, over half of U.S. business owners are age 55 and over. These business owners are going to be looking for an exit sometime in the next 5 to 10 years. That could likely lead to a great deal of acquisition activity in the world of small businesses. And that's just based on retirement planning. Other small businesses see acquisition of similar or complementary businesses as a way to grow rapidly, even as a hedge against a potential recession. Are you focused on the future of your business? Consider whether there is a sale or an acquisition in your not too distant future, and then start putting things in motion to make that happen. And that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. I hope these 5 topics and my take on them get you thinking about how these signals of change could ultimately impact your small business. Join me again in 2 weeks, and thanks for being here today.